Welcome to the Brew Crew Review Podcast, the show by fans for fans of your Milwaukee Brewers. Greetings, Brewer fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Brew Crew Review Podcast. This is podcast number 78, and I'm your host, Tim Travato, joined here on the set by Scott Bartell. Scott, how are you today?
Could be better. We're taping Sunday night, so not a super great three-game series with the Giants, but, you know, all in all, not horrible. I'm in a pretty good mood, all things considered.
I'm sure that our listeners were concerned about your mood, but Scott, are we joined on the set today by Craig or Chad? You know anything about their whereabouts today?
I believe that Craig might be hosting a birthday party for Chad, maybe a surprise party. But yeah, happy birthday, Chad.
Yeah, happy birthday, Chad, and thanks for all that you do for the podcast.
Otherwise, he would be here if it wasn't for the party.
Yeah, no, and I wish that we could be at his party as well. So it's we're all missing out. But in any event, okay, well that sounds good. Let's get right into it today, Scott. So we've got a shorter couple games to look at here because it was the All-Star break, and we'll get to that in a second. But Brewers go 1-2 in the home series after the first series after the break against the Giants. Not a great series. Gave up a lot of runs. Scott, do you want to bring out that stat that your intern got? How many runs did we give up this series?
We gave up 22 runs in 3 games to one of the worst offenses in the league. Yeah,
so now not looking good. I guess let's start delving into what went wrong here with the loss today on Sunday and then also on Friday night's game. And quite frankly, Saturday's game was also blown by the bullpen, and it was late inning heroics that secured at least one win in the series for the Brewers. What's going on with the pitching here, Scott?
I don't know, but no, you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, if it wasn't for those late inning heroics, we would have been swept. Unbelievable.
By the Giants. Yeah, no kidding. I mean, kind of really, really depressing. I mean, it just seems like we can't have any faith whatsoever in the Brewers bullpen locking down a lead late in the game. Usual suspects today were Corbin Burnes and Matt Elbers. You want to have your intern give you Corbin Burnes' pitching line today, Scott?
Oh, man. I don't know if we are going to have, that much time. It's not good. I'm just going to warn everybody that this part of the podcast is brought to you by Pepto-Bismol or Rolaids, something.
No, Rolaids means relief, so it has to be Pepto-Bismol, which, yeah.
It would be ironic, I guess.
It would. So do you have the stats today?
Give me a minute. We can look them up, but we can talk about how, this seemed like an entertaining game, and it was close late, and then it wasn't close late. So.
Yeah, and I guess just as a thematic topic, Corbin Burnes, and we've discussed it on several other podcasts, unfortunately, has truly just not ever found it this year. He's pitched atrociously in 2019 after having a very strong year out of the bullpen last season as a rookie. And, I'm trying to figure out what's wrong with him. And I'm sure that the Brewers coaching staff and front office are trying to figure out the same thing. I mean, this is a guy, you don't just lose your stuff, from year to year, especially a guy that young. What do you think is going on with Corbin Burnes, and why is it that he is unable to find any modicum of success this year coming out of the Brewers bullpen?
It looks like we actually do have that stat line finally. He faced 4 batters. He gave up 4 hits, 4 earned runs, and did not retire anyone. So. Yeah,
and this is his 3rd time in the big leagues this year. He's already been demoted to San Antonio twice. During the season, in just the first half alone. So we'll see what the next couple of months holds for him. But I can't imagine that the Brewers can continue to burn a spot in the bullpen with a guy that's truly just been so ineffective in getting outs. It's mind-boggling to me that he's still put in tight games. And I say this liking Corbin Burnes. It's just the results just are simply not there. On the year this year, he's 1-4. He's got an 8.22 ERA. In the big leagues, 29 games pitched, which is with today's performance, that ERA is going to go up. That does not include today's numbers. And this is his 30th game of the year today, which is the same amount of games that he threw last year for the Crew.
Yeah, I don't know.
8.22 ERA.
Mm. Yeah, no, I mean,
46 innings pitched. Yeah, it's just atrocious. 62 hits given up in 46 innings pitched. I'll let you go with your thoughts now, Scott.
I don't know. I mean, I just looked at it this year, and I really thought that he was going to be a huge part of this bullpen. I actually thought that potentially he could even wind up being the closer for this team this year, and it obviously has not happened. It's weird because his stuff is great. He still has one of the best sliders in the game. His fastball hits 98. Like, everything about him says it should be like successful. And not only that, but it's a total tease because he'll have one game where he'll go out there for an inning, he'll strike out the side, he'll look amazing, and then he'll go out in his next outing and just be completely blown up. His pitch location is just it just has not been there. I mean, he has fastballs that are getting way too much to the plate and sliders that if he overthrows them, it's like the cement mixer that just spins up there and just gets smashed.
Yeah, that's interesting but fitting analogy.
I think cement mixer line, I think I stole that from Bill Schroeder. He says that all the time. So.
Oh, you did? Okay, sounds good. Well, he's the Rock. So, the only glimmer of hope, and to your point, looking at some of these numbers, he does have 67 strikeouts and only 20 walks on the year. That being said, he's also given up 16 home runs. I don't know when the last time it was that a pitcher gave up almost the same amount of home runs as he did walks. It's mind-boggling looking at some of these stats. Last year he gave up 4 home runs in 29 games. This year he's given up 16 in 29. How many home runs did he give up today? Did he give up?
Oh, no, he kept the ball in the park.
Okay, so he's given up 16 home runs in 30 games this year, and he gave up 4 in 29 last season. It's crazy to me.
So I guess what we should probably do is, I mean, I don't want to hammer Corbin Burns all day because, I mean, it is frustrating, of course, because not only because he's pitching so poorly, but because we had such high hopes for him going into this year. And I think that kind of, obviously makes it even more troubling.
Yeah.
But
but there's – oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, let's just play a little game called the Milwaukee Brewers Bullpen. And I'll just read through the names of people in the pen right now, just like the usual suspects. So if I miss one, don't be mad.
Well, can we get to that in about 10 seconds? I just wanted to make one more point just to hammer on Burns one more time.
I guess.
Yeah, right. And that is that there's a third problem here, too. It's not just that we had high hopes for him and that he's pitching poorly. It's also that this is a guy that probably was one of our better trade chips at the deadline last year. We kept him, obviously, and he could conceivably have been a trade chip this year as well. Clearly, his stock has had to have gone way down. So, if the Brewers are looking at making moves this deadline, and we'll get to that later on in the show, whether we should be sellers or buyers in a few weeks, or if we could have gotten something for him last year. I don't know that we're at the point where we want to give up on a guy like Corbin Burns yet with that talent, but just throwing it out there that his trade stock has also decreased dramatically, or it has to have had, just because of his performance this season. Okay, the rant is done.
No, absolutely. And you can actually, we could go on a whole side rant about what's happened with just the Brewers, top prospects in general. I mean, if you looked at potential trade chips, you'd look at Corey Ray, hurt, Zach Brown, hurt and hasn't pitched as well as he probably would like to. I mean, all of our best chips. I mean, at this point, our best trade chip, it's definitely Keston Hiura, but we really want to hang on to him,
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that Keston has kind of penciled himself in as the second baseman of the future, especially with Mike Moustakas being a free agent at the end of the year, and then with Travis Shaw's poor play this season, making Moustakas move back to third, it kind of becomes irrelevant, Moustakas' contract status. So, yeah, it's interesting. You'd think that a guy like, Bryce Terang is going to have some trade value, but I don't know, again, that the Brewers want to trade a guy like that. He's putting up great numbers and just got promoted in A-ball. So, it is a bit difficult to kind of envision who from the Brewers system is going to be viewed that strongly by other teams if we were trying to put together a package at the deadline if we're going to be buyers. Now, if we're going to be sellers, and again, we can get into this in more detail later, but, then you've got to add a guy like Corey Knebel to that disappointment list because he was a guy who I think would have fetched quite a bit on the trade market this season as a closer, a proven closer, provided that he had pitched at all like he did in September of last year or in the year before that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at it, if it actually gets to the point where we say, "Hey, we're gonna be sellers and try to reload for next year," you have to look at potentially trying to see if Moustakas or Groundell, both of them have a mutual option for next year. And to be honest, if this team continues to underachieve this year, I don't see why either one of those guys would want to stick around, especially when you think that they're both basically coming off career years. So there's a real good chance for them to get a lot more on the open market, or at least a longer deal.
Yeah, exactly. So the Brewers are going to have some tough decisions to make here in the next couple of weeks. It's a poor time of year to be playing as bad as we are because, it puts the organization in kind of a weird spot. And, in June, the Cubs playing as bad as we were, so we didn't really lose a ton of ground actually. But the fact is that the second half, the Cubs have traditionally kind of turned it on a little bit, and I don't know that we can continue to keep pace. I mean, we seemingly can't even, win a series against the lowly Giants. So it's a tough stretch, and it has been now for about 4 or 5 weeks. It's definitely not good.
Yeah, and I guess just to, put a bow on it. I mean, looking at other people that we could potentially sell off, all their stocks are low. I mean, Aguirre and Thames have picked it up a little bit, but probably still not where they want to be. Thames is definitely getting close. Manny Pena is really doesn't have any value anymore. So I don't know. Travis Shaw, There's a name. Can't really sell when he's that low.
Yeah, that's right. The Brewers, looking through our notes here, let me look at this really quickly. We've lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 4. We've lost 4 of our last 5 series. We split with the Reds before that. And before that was a sweep by the Padres, another series loss against the Giants, and then a split with the Astros going back to June 11th. So we're really not playing well now for, over a month. It's not been good for the last few weeks for the Brewers.
Oh, the worst part is that when you looked at the schedule, this was the easiest month. Like, this was the month where we were supposed to get back out in first place, which we were briefly.
That's right.
And then we were supposed to, create a little headway and then get all that momentum going into the trade deadline and then pick up something and say, hey, we're going to be, at this point, we're in a real great shape to not only make the playoffs, but repeat as Central Division winners and hopefully make another deep playoff run. Unfortunately,
especially
has not worked.
No, and especially with other teams in the division playing as poorly as they have. I mean, on one hand, of course, it keeps us in contention for longer. On the other hand, though, it's a little frustrating that we couldn't be up 5 games on the Cubs right now with their month of June. I mean, they've had a lot of problems themselves. Brewers could realistically have been up, I would say, 5 games on the Cubs if we had just played remotely good baseball the last month.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right, so let's play our very brief first time ever game: overachieving or underachieving Milwaukee Brewers bullpen.
All right, let's do it.
Well, let's start on a good note here. Josh Hader.
He's given up a couple key home runs, but overall, of course, he's been great. So still give Josh, I would say, an A- on the year.
Yeah, I'll still say overachieving. Okay, so he's overachieving what we expected of him. Let's I guess.
Yes. Okay.
Narrow down the rules a little bit. Okay. So Matt Albers, over or underachieving?
Overachieving.
What? I just said underachieving.
Yeah. No, because I had 0 expectations for him. He had a good, bad game today, but overall, I'd still say on the year he's pitching a little bit better than I expected him to, which again wasn't very much.
Okay. Yeah, you may not have had high hopes for him. We weren't looking at 2017 Matt Albers. I guess we were looking at 2018. I'm still gonna say
he's got
underachieving.
He's got a 4.50 ERA on the year. He's not great. He's not awful. So he's just sort of average-ish arm out there.
Alex Claudio. This is a tough one.
I'm going to say underachieving, but I also think that he's being misused a little bit. I think he should be primarily a loogie. So when Counsell has him facing righties, it kind of ruins that for him. I don't think it's necessarily fair for him, but I'll still say underachieving overall. Even though he's got a 4.19 ERA, he has pitched in a lot of games. He's thrown 51 games already, and he threw in 66 last year during the entire year. So he's going to probably surpass that, barring an injury. I'll still say underachieving.
Yeah, I'll say.
But I don't think he's the main issue. So okay.
Right. No, I mean the rubber arm definitely helps, and he won't be able to be a loogie basically next year anyway. So I mean, but right. Yeah, I do agree with your point there. Junior Guerra.
That's another tough one. Pretty much exactly kind of what I had him at, actually. I don't think he's underachieving. I don't think he's overachieving. It's kind of a non-answer. He's kind of right within his career norms almost. I like the fact that he's thrown 40 games. I like the fact that, he's able to throw multiple innings when he does go out there. He's had some recent rough outings, but I still overall have faith in him when he's brought in. So I'll just say even.
All right. I'm still going to say underachieving, although not by much. I thought that he always really had the stuff. I mean, if your ERA is over 4 in a bullpen, you're probably not doing great. So,
right.
Jeremy Jeffers.
Underachieving for sure.
Yeah.
Been hard to watch him this year. I think that he's a guy that everybody wants to root for. Again, another guy. It's not awful. He does have a sub-4 ERA, but it's not by much, and certainly far off the pace of his, sterling 2018 numbers. He was 8-1 last year, 1.29 ERA, 73 games. I mean, this guy was like lights out last year, and maybe part of that can be attributed to the fact that he came out of spring training hurt, started the year on the disabled list. Maybe didn't get his reps in the spring as much as he would have. Maybe there's an underlying issue. You never know. In any event, I'll say underachieving.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And then, I mean, at this point, we can just say any myriad of of people that have been shuffled between here and AAA, they're basically all underachieving unless you can think of a name. But I can't think of anybody that's underachieving of all of them.
No, I can't think of any overachievers. I'll say that a few of those guys haven't really been given prolonged stints to, get a good look. Guys like Jay Jackson, who was recently brought back up, and guys like Donnie Wall or, others that made kind of spot appearances on the team this year. Even Jake Patricia, who's now gone. But guys like that, I don't think we could really necessarily give a grade to if we were trying to give these guys grades or say that they're over or underachieving. Just didn't get a good enough look.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just been really, really frustrating. I mean, you look at that bullpen and you think, I mean, all of those people that I just listed, they were all here last year, except for Claudio.
Yeah.
And it was such an absolute lights-out, dominant bullpen, and it's just not coming together this year. And
the bullpen can be a fickle mistress, Scott. It's it's weird how that changes from year to year and even from month to month, and those dynamics can be really interesting. So I will just say that if we're going to be buyers at the deadline, we have to get at least one more bullpen arm. I just cannot see this team going anywhere in the playoffs with the current bullpen, or as it's currently situated at least.
Yeah, I think it's very possible. I mean, really, in reality, we probably need 2 or 3, but the problem is that every playoff contender wants a bullpen arm. So they're always high in demand. And not only that, but we're going to be looking for somebody that's not just going to be a one-year rental. We want somebody that is going to be on the team in 2020.
I don't know, though, because David Stearns does have a history of going and getting bullpen arms that are going to be free agents at the end of the year. Last year he did that with Xavier Cedeno, and he did that with Joaquin Soria. And by the way, both of those guys were really solid for us in the second half, and we chose not to re-sign them. So, when we're talking about the 2018 Brewers bullpen, it should be pointed out that we did lose a couple key arms from that pen besides just Knable to injury.
Yeah, Cedeno wasn't great. Soria was probably, I don't know. He was really good. I mean, he was part of that dominant bullpen. I mean, I don't know. It's just so frustrating. I mean, even Hader has been bitten by the long ball several times. I mean, if you look at even just there's probably, I don't know, 3 games this year that that have gone the wrong way because of a home run that he's given up. And I mean, man, that's a 6-game swing right there. We could be having a different conversation.
I agree. And just for the record, Xavier Cedeno posted a 1.13 ERA for the Brewers last year in 15 games. I said Xavier Cedeno posted a 1.13 ERA in 15 games for the Brewers last year.
It's incredible. What do you do in the postseason? Why do I think that he wasn't that good?
Maybe you weren't analyzing. I mean, you were definitely a host though last year, Scott. I mean,
I don't know. It just seems maybe it was a playoff thing, but it seemed like he was often brought in to face the lefty and often could not get them out.
He had a rough playoff series. He did pitch in 4 games against the Dodgers and did give up some runs. He pitched only 1 inning though, so it wasn't like he had extended time. But he did give up 2 earned runs in 1 inning that he did pitch.
All right. Well, I take it all back then. It sucks when stats get in the way of opinions.
Yeah, it is what it is. But no, it's been overall a problem, across the board for our pitchers this year. It's not just the bullpen. Unfortunately, our starters, once again, have not really stepped up this year. Hopefully, we're seeing better Ulysses Chassin, I should say, in the second half. His first half, though, was not good. Joe Gonzalez has been out for a good chunk of the year with injury and signed late with the team, so he really hasn't pitched all that often for the Brewers. Brandon Woodruff and Zach Davies have pitched great and kind of carried the pitching staff, I would say. But, I mean, what is it that we need to do to get some of our starting pitching back to form as well? Or do we just need to really focus on the starting pitcher as well at the deadline if we are going to be buyers?
I don't know. If we're looking for a starting pitcher, then I definitely want somebody that's going to be in that's going to be in the rotation next year. I mean, like, I just don't want to give up important pieces, like important trade chips, and mortgage our future for a team that right now – see, I think this is why I'm so negative right now. I mean, okay, the team has not played well. They haven't lived up to their potential. They probably overachieved quite a bit last year, which, unfortunately means that they came down to earth a little bit this year, so maybe my hopes were a little bit too high. But – I just think I just think that, like, there's just the last month they've really regressed so much that right now, I mean, we have, like, if you're gonna say like things like momentum, I mean, we would have the least amount of momentum of any team in the Central right now. Every other fan base in the NL Central thinks that they have a better shot at making the playoffs than the Brewers fan base right now, because we've been so bad for the last month.
Yeah, no, that's probably accurate and true, and not just from Craig. It's probably from everybody at this point. I think, again, it's going to be very telling what the Brewers do at the deadline. If, because we're mathematically close, David Stern sees this as a year to, quote-unquote, go for it again. I don't think that the momentum thing is quite as big of a deal right now as others. I don't worry about momentum as much in July as I do in September. So David Stearns may look at this team and say, okay, all right, this is a group of guys mostly still intact from last year that played very well in September, played their best baseball actually in September of last season. So maybe just with that little nudge of getting a couple guys at the deadline, that might be what propels this team back to kind of that hyper aggressively winning baseball that we saw at the end of last season.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. Although, again, I'm really upset with the new, like, hard trade deadline on the 31st. Nobody else, like, getting through waivers that you can sneak onto the roster before September 1st. Like, can't do any of that anymore. And I think that really, really hurts small market teams, because it means that if you think that you have a shot, you really have to go for it, and you have to pull the trigger in July versus, waiting until the end of August. And I don't know. It's so frustrating that you could do that. I mean, if you look at it last year, does this team win the Central without let's see, we picked up several guys. We
picked up Granderson, Cedeno, trying to think of who else was that last kind of flirt. Oh, Gio was the other guy. We picked up 3 guys. And then Jonathan Scope was already on the team, but only by a few weeks. And that was by the All-Star break. That was by July. But So I think it was Moustakis, Soria, and Scope were picked up before the July 31st trade deadline last year, but then it was Granderson, Cedeno, and Gio that were picked up at the August 31st deadline. It'll be really interesting to see if this means more or less activity. Actually, I'm curious as a test case this season what that'll mean. What do you think? Do you think it's going to mean more activity or less activity for teams at the deadline?
I mean, I think there has to be more activity now because, especially when you factor in like 2 wild cards, there's still a lot of teams that really think that they're in it, and they know that they have a fan base that is expecting them to do something, and they're not going to be able to do it later anymore. So it's like being able to pick up people off the waiver wire was kind of like your halfway, like, I want to improve the team, but I don't want to mortgage the future. There's not a lot that I have to really trade to get these guys. They're like usually overpaid players that you don't have to necessarily give up a lot for, but they're still good, or they're just average players that are just filling a need for your team. I mean, without those 3 guys, we probably don't win the Central. We get into 1-game wild card game, and then who knows how that goes. I mean, ask the Cubs how that feels, you know? I mean, the driver's seat all year, thought they were going to, you know, win the division, and then they get a 1-game playoff game, and they're smoked and their season's done.
By the flip side of that, though, more teams being in it may mean that teams are also not willing to trade guys, too. So it could be there may be less trading partners for, you know, teams that are in contention to trade with, and the guys that are available then might have a higher price tag as well that might drive down some activity. So, yeah, but I think it could go either way. I'm actually really curious to see what happens this year.
I should probably just look and be like, oh, okay, like, actually, this would be pretty easy. Okay, so let's just look at there's still a good amount of teams that are almost completely out of it. I mean, Blue Jays, Orioles, Royals, Tigers, Mariners have already sold everything. That's pretty much it in the AL, I guess. I mean, there's some teams that are great, but Mets and Marlins, and I'm just going to say everybody in the NL Central is still in it. I don't know.
Even the Reds claim that they're going to go for it at the deadline.
And then the Giants, and I can't see the Padres selling much because they spent so much in the offseason. But, I mean, there's still a good amount of teams there, and those teams are going to they're going to be able to get, to reload pretty quickly because they might have multiple chips. I mean, even just looking at the Giants this year, I mean, we've always been tied to, let's go get Will Smith, or maybe we should look at Bumgarner. They're going to they're likely going to make multiple trades.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And maybe less blockbusters and more one-on-one deals, because it seems like you can get more for guys one-on-one right now than a blockbuster deal, but we'll see what happens with that. Have you gotten any – and we'll get to this in more detail in our next podcast because it'll be a little bit closer to the deadline and another week of games here. We'll have ensued. Maybe it'll paint the picture a little clearer for the Brewers. But have you got any inside information from our anonymous source, Tom Carter, about guys that the Brewers might particularly be interested in, Scott, when you talk to our anonymous source, Tom Carter?
Wow, I don't know. I don't know where to begin with this. Actually, Tom told me that he was considering cutting us off for the trade deadline with some of his insider information because he said that we keep saying his name and he wants to be anonymous on the show and all that kind of stuff. But
no, that's ridiculous. We gave him plenty of credit last year.
I know.
You know.
I don't know if he was joking or what, but he basically said that the next 2 weeks, the way that the Brewers play is going to be very telling. So as far as what they're going to do. So I don't know.
All right.
Might be the type of thing where this team – the last thing this team really wants to do right now is go 500 for the next 2 weeks. It's almost where you better win 10 or lose 10.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm of the same mindset. I actually fully agree with that. So I'm hoping that it's winning 10 games and, picking up 3-4 games on the Cubs. But, we'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting as always. And it seems like there's never a year where the Brewers can comfortably, look at the deadline and say, all right, we're we're for sure going to be going for it, and we're, going to be able to coast into the playoffs. That just really hasn't happened since 2011. So will be very interesting, I guess, to see where we kind of end up in the next few weeks. So one move that we should discuss really quickly here on the show before getting to some email questions. Mauricio Dubon made his debut, as you know, from our last podcast. It was last Sunday, and he has already been sent back down to AAA San Antonio. Pitcher Jay Jackson was recalled in his place. That was the only roster move this week. Jay Jackson had appeared for the Brewers earlier on in the season, I believe in April, but had posted very good numbers down in AAA with San Antonio. Scott, what do you think of this move? Dubon heading back down to the minor leagues after only getting 2 at-bats, actually.
I hate to say it, but it's kind of what I expected. I think when it came out that Arcia was just going to be day-to-day with his injury, I think he was just up here for a safety net. And, I mean, I guess it's possible that I wouldn't mind seeing him up for a little bit longer and maybe send Saladino down. But
yeah, and that was kind of the debate on Twitter. I think everybody was kind of saying, okay, well, our bullpen clearly needs some guys, some reinforcements. Jay Jackson has been pitching great in AAA, but, was it Saladino or Dubon that should have gotten sent down?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think Saladino started off white hot last year when he came up, and then he kind of fell back down to earth. And we still don't know what we have in Dubon, and so I kind of wanted to see more of that. I mean, I don't know, but we'll see what happens. I have a feeling that if he isn't traded, that he will be back up at some point this year, but you never know.
Yeah, and I would put Dubon at the top of the list of guys that'll be likely out of the organization and via trade if the Brewers do decide to become sellers.
Yeah, so I don't know. Let's check out, how I said, it'll be interesting to see how we play the next 2 weeks. So here's what we got. We're home against the Braves for 3. Then we go to the Arizona Diamondbacks, who are kind of sneaky good-ish, I guess. I don't know. I wish Craig was here. He'd tell us how great the Diamondbacks are. or
they're not that great.
No, they're not that great. But I guess if you go by like that run differential Pythagorean kind of thing, people think that they're very, very good this year. I think they're okay. So
yeah, Craig, I don't think Craig uses that. I think he uses WAR, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think Craig necessarily likes WAR either. I mean, if you go by WAR, Jeremy Jefferson is more valuable than Josh Hader last year. So I mean, I'm not
interesting.
But Jefferson had an amazing year last year too. So then after that, just to round out up to the trade deadline, we're at home for 3 versus the Reds and then 3 versus the Cubs. And then we play the Athletics the last 2 days of the month in Oakland. So not an easy schedule by any means. I mean,
no, not at all. And like you pointed out earlier in the show, it's unfortunate because we were, supposedly having our easiest month the last, 4 or 5 weeks, and did not make much ground. In fact, lost ground during that time. So yeah, not the best. But again, we'll see. If you're, playoff team, you're going to have to play a great team. So this will be a good test case for the Brewers, and we'll see where we're at and adjust accordingly. I'm confident that Stearns can at least adjust. Even at the last minute, if need be. He's shown that he can do that in previous years, whether it's acquiring guys or being a seller. So I think that this year will be no different with that. Let's just hope that, if we're going to restock, that it's not going to be I don't think it'll be a long rebuild or something. If we're going to get rid of guys like Moustakas or Grandal, I think we're going to get guys who are near Major League ready for those guys. But we'll see. Time will tell.
Yeah, should be interesting. So do you want to make any prediction for the next week with 3 at home at the Braves and then 4 on the road against the D-backs?
Yeah, I guess. We'll go 3 and we got 7 games total.
Yep.
Yeah, 3 and 4. Which is exactly what I do not want to happen, but yeah.
No, exactly. No, I had 3 and 4 before that. I'm like, I should switch it up just to be different, but I'm going to stick with it. 3 and 4 sounds about right. I think that's the first time that I actually picked them to have a week under 500. but I don't know. I mean, this last month, it's really it's been a trying month.
Taking its toll, Brewer fans. Well, let's stay with it. Then we'll hopefully be wrong, and the Brewers will have a winning week. And would love to rattle off a 6-1 or 5-2 week, but we'll see what happens. It is a long season, so there are periods of for any team that is in Major League Baseball that goes through droughts like this. But you can't make them for over a month long. It's got to be something that there's a course correction at some point. And again, the only benefit that we can really point to at this stage is that the Cubs and other division foes have also not played very well, so the Brewers are mathematically still right in it. It's just kind of a matter of how long we can expect the other teams to also not play well. So, it's going to be a very interesting couple of weeks for a variety of reasons. Scott, let's get quickly to our mailbag here. I think that we had some questions that came into our email account, which again, folks, is Brew Crew Review Podcast with an S at gmail.com. This question comes from Lindsay Gosden. It's specifically addressed to you, Scott. And she says, Scott Bartell, so great to reconnect, dude. Who do you think should be the odd man out if the Brewers are to release someone from the bullpen as it's currently situated? Will there be movement in the pen at the deadline? XOXOXO, Lindsay Gosden from Bayshore, Wisconsin.
I hate to say it, but the odd man out. Wait, I'm sorry. When did she say odd man out? When? At the deadline, or?
Yeah, she said at the deadline. Should there be anyone that's first of all, flat out released at the deadline, or should there be, which guy do you think is most likely to be gone out of the bullpen? I think at the deadline is her question. Besides, there'll be XOs.
I hate to say it, but with all the stuff we've already talked about in this episode, I think Corbin Burns really needs a solid month down in the minors. Literally, I would send him down today and say, you're finishing the season in San Antonio, and you're gonna and we're gonna pitch yourself back onto this roster. Just go back to your fundamentals and get your locations back down and get your location better, and let's reevaluate then.
Yeah, she didn't write to me, but I would totally agree with that. I think that you could sense the frustration in my voice at the beginning of the episode. But, yeah, I think Corbin Burns has got to be out at this point. And, it remains to be seen if there's, something that's wrong with his mechanics or if it's mental or what it is. But some time in the minor leagues might be beneficial for him. And not this, go down for 4 days type of thing like the last time, or even 2 weeks like one of the other times, but really take a solid month and a half, the remainder of the minor league season, and just work it out. You've got to figure it out because, with his live arm and his talent, he's got the chance, in 2020 to be a key member of this team again, but it's going to have to come from, him fixing whatever issues he currently has, because it's obviously not working as it stands.
Yeah. And if I have to pick a second person, I think the next person up would probably wind up being Freddie Peralta, who still shows flashes of brilliance also, but he's just getting hit too much.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, did you want to get into, do we have any Twitter polls this week that your interns put up?
I actually didn't put any up. I was going to put one up saying what we needed most at the deadline, and then I think it was 105.7 The Fan literally put it up 4 minutes before I did. So I was like, I guess I'm not going to put it up. I'll wait.
Well, fair enough. Let's remind our listeners then, you can follow us on Twitter at Brew Crew Review 1. We do try to monitor that very often and are regularly posting stuff on Twitter, so please give us a follow.
Yes, please do that. And also, if you are so kind to download our wonderful podcast and listen to us and give us those 5-star ratings, we absolutely appreciate it. And frankly, if there's anything that we can do, to make this experience even as fun for you as it is for us, please feel free to message us and let us know, because it's always great just running into people who know us and say, I listened to that last episode. That was pretty good. Stuff like that. Just running into people in random Milwaukee bars like back in the day. That was always fun. So, really appreciate it, guys.
That's true. And speaking of having fun, let's hope our next podcast is more fun because the Brewers are back to their winning ways. So we'll remain optimistic here on the Brew Crew Review. And, with that, we'll leave you for the week. But Thanks again for listening. We enjoyed talking some baseball with you guys here on a beautiful Sunday afternoon, and it'd be nice to get to the grill tonight and kind of forget about the the last few Brewer games, Scott.
Yeah, guys, just remember this. It's going to get better, probably.
Maybe. Yeah. Sounds like a good mantra for the team. All right,
There's
guys.
a realistic chance that it might get better.
Maybe. Yeah. And I'm the optimist. So sounds good, guys. Well, thanks as always for tuning in. Remember to give us a follow and stay classy, Brewer fans.
Yep, stay classy and go Brewers.
Go Brewers. Dun, 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 dun.